Tonight we have Clint Perkins. He is a graduate research assistant at Texas Tech University in Lubbock, Texas. We actually have a nephew that's just started there this year, so maybe you'll run into him. Clint previously researched the conservation status of the eastern spotted skunk. I'm not going to try and pronounce the Latin version, but in the state of Texas, he's currently researching spatial ecology and population demographics of the eastern spotted skunk in a remnant tallgrass prairie ecosystem. And thank you, Clint, for managing to get through all of the adversity we had as trying to get you onto the Zoom call tonight.
Thank you, Michelle. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is there any feedback right now?
There is not. You're good.
All righty. Yeah, everyone. We had a few little issues getting in and getting going, but I think we're good to go now. So just let me get everything shared here, and then I'll start the show. And unfortunately, I don't have any video, so I'm gonna. I guess you guys are not gonna get to see my smiling face this evening. So, all right. We should be sharing now, and pull all the way up here. So, yeah, I want to. I don't know why it's not starting in the right spot. Technical difficulties. There we go. There we go.
We can see it. It's great.
And Clint, you went muted, so we can't hear you anymore.
Oh, there we go. I think that was just an accidental click there. All right. Yeah, so I am Clint. I've been working with spotted skunks in Texas for about 7 years now. And we're going to talk a little bit tonight about, the eastern spotted skunk, now known as the plain spotted skunk. And we're going to talk a little bit about identifying the two different types of western spotted skunk here in the great state of Texas. We're going to talk about some of the research that's been going on for the last 6 or 7 years, mostly here in Texas, but I'll bring in some stuff from outside the state. And that's going to kind of get us through about the 45 minutes of the main presentation. And Mike had told me when he reached out to invite me here tonight that the chapter was looking into pairing up with the nature trackers and doing a spotted skunk survey there locally. So at the end, I've got, I don't know, an extra 10 minutes or so of just kind of the survey techniques we use for camera trapping. So to introduce myself just a little bit, I'm a Louisiana native, central Louisiana, very, very rural upbringing that, in the 80s and 90s, I was really into consumptive use. And that kind of led me to being a Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries nuisance alligator hunter, and then a nuisance, what do we call it? Animal damage control. And that was for kind of the mammals and whatnot. And I was doing that from kind of the end of high school throughout my undergraduate career. And kind of because I was so interested in doing that and so busy doing those things, but it kind of took me a long time to get through undergrad. So it took me about 9.5 years to get through undergrad. But I finally did. And then a few years later, I ended up here in Texas. I was recruited out of Louisiana to come work on the conservation status of the plain spotted skunk in Texas. And pretty much immediately after finishing that project, rolled into the ecology of the plain spotted skunk in southeastern Texas. And we're going to talk a little bit more about both of those projects here in a bit. And then kind of in the interim, those gaps over the last 11 years, I was out doing, wildlife technician work and a biologist and stuff, and, got to really travel the country and do a lot of neat things. So looking at those pictures there, the top left is that's sea turtles in Florida, and the next one is a white pelican getting banded in North Dakota, and that's a kit fox that just got a collar put on it in Utah, and that's a um, a bald eagle fledgling from North Dakota. Oh, and I kind of forgot to mention that if anybody has questions or if anything comes up in the chat, just feel free to stop me. I respond very well with give and take during a presentation. So don't think that you have to hold your tongue or hold your questions to the end. So looking here in Texas, there are 5 species of skunk from 3 genera. And at least one of these you probably know really, really well, and that's Methodus. And that's the genus for the striped skunk and the hooded skunk, with the striped skunk being the ubiquitous skunk that everybody immediately conjures up when they hear the word skunk. The hood in the picture here, the striped skunk is on the far right, and then the hooded skunk is one to the left. And this individual species is pretty much only in the Trans-Pecos area and really down by Big Bend here in the state. And then the next is Conopatus, and that's kind of the American hognose skunk. And this is it's a pretty big genus. There's 4 different species in this genus, but most of them are South American, and the one we have here in Texas, the American hognose, that's the only one that gets up here into Mexico and the U.S. And they're pretty much only from the Edwards Plateau back west here in the state. And then kind of the stars of tonight are going to be from the genus Spilagale. And we have 2, and they used to be subspecies of the eastern and subspecies of the western, but within the last month or so, there's been some taxonomic revision, and now the plain subspecies is actually the plain spotted skunk, and the desert subspecies of the western spotted skunk is now the desert. But you'll notice as we go throughout the presentation that all of this is still so new that I'd go back and forth between the old names and the new names. So the plain spotted skunk, Spilagale interrupta, is from the Great Plains region, and historically it did barely get south of the Rio Grande down into Tamaulipas. And it does, or at least historically did get a little bit into Canada, but by and large, the overwhelming portion of the distribution of this species was the Great Plains region. And one of the reasons there's been this plethora of research into this species in the last 5 years, 10 years or so, is because it's undergone just this drastic range-wide population decline, which, being the plain spotted skunk, with the loss of the prairie habitat, it would make sense that a species that is dependent upon that habitat, that species would also go into decline. Currently, both here in Texas and throughout its historical range, there is an uncertainty as to what the current distribution is. We've been working on it a little bit longer in Texas than some of the other states, so we do have a little bit better idea, and I'll show you some maps here in a little bit. But overall, I mean, there's still a few states that we're not even certain if the species is still present in the state or not. Oops, wrong one. And then, so the species is a small mesocarnivore, and by small I do mean small. So this little fella is about the size of a fox squirrel. If you kind of look in historical records, it says that they'll get up to 1 kilogram or so, but I've caught 56 of them here in Texas, and the largest I've caught has only been about 800 grams. And and kind of opposed to the other skunks, which are mainly insectivorous and then sometimes a little bit omnivorous, especially when there's something like prickly pear fruits or dewberries or something like that. What we see with the spotted skunks is that they're much more carnivorous, especially during the winter season. They feed a lot on small mammals, but they'll also go after herps. They'll go after ground nesting birds, and both the chicks and the eggs. And one of the kind of neat things about the species is that even though it was historically quote unquote the plains, they are also currently in the Ouachita and the Ozark Mountains in Arkansas and Missouri, respectively, and I guess Oklahoma as well. And kind of look at it and see, well, some of these things, as far as habitat goes, maybe more of a generalist in that they can be pretty much everywhere. But they have this very, very specialist requirement as far as the habitat is concerned, and that is that they have to have an abundance of cover. And the cover can be, different things. If you're getting into native prairie, you're talking, the grass is a meter high or whatnot, and they're down there on the ground floor, and they're getting in all the dead grasses and whatnot. And you get someplace like out in the cross timbers, what we see is that overhead canopy cover that is closed canopy due to the junipers. You start finding the places where there's dense juniper stands, and then that type of area starts becoming appropriate habitat for the spotted skunk. And then if you were in the mountains, what you're seeing is early successional pine or mixed pine hardwood forest, and that as the forest ages and as it matures and opens up more and more, that habitat becomes less and less suitable for the species. Now, the species can be human associated, and what I mean by that is kind of the peripheries of small towns. Kind of that urban rural gradient. What you'll see is that a lot of times they'll be in houses, they'll be in outbuildings, they'll be quote unquote the back 40 and the brush piles and whatnot. And they really like to find chicken coops, and they really like to raid chicken coops. So sometimes they don't get they don't have the best of reputation with some of our rural counterparts. So currently, this species is going underneath a species status assessment by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and this was kicked off by a 90-day finding in 2012. And in December of 2012, the species went into, it's called a 1 year or 12-month review. And during that time frame is when all the experts are supposed to get together and get all of the information that's known about this species and put together a draft of the species status assessment. Well, unfortunately, nobody has been doing any research, and nobody's been doing any management, both at the kind of the research level or at the state level. They haven't been doing any of this research on this species, and really haven't been doing it since the 1940s. Some of it might be because it's a skunk, and there's that certain je ne sais quoi associated with a skunk and dealing with the smell. So anyway, it's taken the last 9 years, the last 10 years, to really start putting together all this information about this species so that the experts can get together and put together this draft of the species status assessment. And this was kicked off in June and July of 2020. And what we're going to see in January is the draft is going to go out to the stakeholders, and then the stakeholders will get a chance to comment on it. And then it'll go back and then maybe this year there will be a review published and we'll get some type of idea as far as which way the winds are blowing, whether this species is going to get a threatened or an endangered or a not warranted standing. And Texas is very, very well represented in this process. So we have 7+ years of continuous research here, and that's more than any other state. And we've been doing a lot of great work that you're going to hear about here in a minute. A lot of this work has been funded by the Texas Comptroller of Public Accounts. And then there's also been some work going on at Fort Hood, both stuff that I've been associated with and some stuff that I haven't been associated with. And then, so one of the really, really neat things that's kind of happened here as part of this species status assessment is that in 2015, a group of us got together and we founded an Eastern Spotted Skunk Cooperative Study Group. And this group was founded from the ground up, meaning that there was not an impetus from the federal level to, do this. We just said, well, let's get together, let's pull our ideas as far as what we're seeing and what's working, the research, the management, everything. And this group has just been phenomenal. And I've been associated with it, pretty much the whole time. And I'm actually these days for the last 2 years or so, I've been on the advisory committee for the group, kind of handling a bunch of the stuff here with the plain species. And we actually just September, middle of September, we had this really nice virtual meeting where we had 16 different presentations from all over the U.S. And at the end, I've got some links and stuff. And one of those links is to our YouTube page. So if you're interested in any of those, and I would definitely recommend, going and checking them out because they've got the title and the abstracts. And then I think there's a couple of them you guys would be interested in, but you can go check that out. All right. So as I was mentioning, there are 2 species of spotted skunk here in the state of Texas. And the kind of just distribution and present is really not sufficient for identification between the 2 species. And it's because in the central portion of Texas, historically, the 2 species were sympatric, and they're probably still a little bit of sympatry in this area, which would be just east and west of the Edwards Plateau, of the eastern edge of the Edwards Plateau. And in that area, we can't tell the difference between the 2 species from tracks, or we can't tell the difference from behavior, i.e. their handstand behavior. If somebody saw that, I could say, well, that's a good story, and I know it's a spotted skunk, but without something more, I can't tell you if it's an eastern or a western. Also, you can't tell the difference between the 2 species with kind of poor quality images, and I've got some of those you guys are going to see here in a bit. And it is a little bit difficult without training, but with this little bit of training we're going to go through, it's going to become just super simple to tell the difference between these 2 species. And the only one I'm going to talk about here on this page is size. And the plain spotted skunk is a little bit bigger, about 15-20% bigger on average than the western spotted skunk. But if you've only got a picture, you can't tell that. Or if you're not holding 2 of them at the same time, you can't tell that. Or maybe if you don't have a lot of experience, you might not be able to tell that. Because a lot of these differences are just relative, and you have to gain that experience. But we can say that once you gain experience at about a 100% clip, you can identify between the 2. So the first thing we're going to look at here is the amount of white on the bottom side of the tail. And you'll see there on the left, that's a plains from Oklahoma. And then on the right, that's a Western from San Angelo. And in the plains, the white is just right there at the tip. Maybe, and this one actually does have a good bit of white. So that's maybe the distal 1/3 tip of the tail. But you look over here at the Western, and almost the entirety of the tail has that white fur on the bottom side. So that's one good way to tell the difference. And then just look at the striping pattern here. So you could see in the Western on the right that those are just really big, really robust, really wide stripes, and there's not a lot of broken to them. And really, there's either as much or almost as much white on this skunk's back as there is black. And then you kind of look over here at the eastern, the plains, and you see that there's the stripes are not robust. You see some brokenness in them, and there's decidedly more black on that animal than there is white. So then another good one is the forehead spot, and this is really one. It's kind of easy because in a lot of pictures, either trail camera or road kills or something like that, people will get the head, and you can obviously see the size difference there. And what I like to tell people for the plains is, that spot, if you can take the tip of your pinky and cover that spot up, it's going to be a plains. And if you take the tip of your thumb and the spot is larger than the tip of your thumb, that's going to be a Western. And then one of the, I guess the last one we're going to go through is this ear stripe here. And you can see on the plains that it's not very robust, and it is broken by the ear. And then you look over there at the Western, and it's very thick, very robust, and it goes straight through the ear. So that's another good one. And as we go through the presentation, there's a lot of pictures you're going to see of mostly of the plains, but you can look and kind of pick up on some of these cues as we go throughout to kind of help train yourselves. Oh, too many. All right. So then here we just got some on the pinning board for the Angelo State Natural History Collection. And you can see we've got a Western there on the left, and then we've got a plains here on the right. And that plains actually came from South Dakota. And you can tell it looks even a little bit different from our spotted skunks, our plain spotted skunks down here in Texas. But putting them right there side by side, it's pretty obvious which one is which and the differences between the two. Well, what about the specimen drawer at the museum? Well, it's pretty obvious in there as well. And I hope you guys can tell that the line of skunks on your right are all plain spotted skunks, and the line of skunks on the left are all Western spotted skunks, except for that big one there in the middle. That's a plain that snuck in there somehow. And then just to kind of show it again, and this is some colleagues in Wyoming, and they were doing a genetic survey. So they went to some other colleagues in South Dakota, and those are the first three. And then they went to even more colleagues in Washington, and they were catching these skunks and taking genetic samples before they put collars on the animals and released them. And they just had this photo in one of their publications. And it's really neat to kind of go through and see the differences in the pelage between all of these images. And the South Dakota ones, those are the plain spotted skunks, and the Wyoming ones, which are the next five there, those are the new desert spotted skunks. And then the ones over here, the two in the bottom right, those are Washington, and those are what we're calling the Western spotted skunks now. So what about identification from camera trap images? Well, sometimes it's pretty easy, and this is one of those times. I've got a really good picture here, and you can see the tail coloration there. It's just a little bit on the tip, and you can see the body that those stripes are not as robust. And I apologize for the noise here. I'm getting emails. You can also see the broken ear spot, and a little bit you can kind of see the eye spot there that's popping through. But what happens when you get in a situation here where maybe you can't see all of that? So on this one, this little fella's got its head down. So you can't see the eye spot, and you can't see the ear spot, and you can't see the tip of the tail. So that's when you got to look at it and say, well, there's a lot of black on that one. And those broken stripes. And, it's my image, and I know it's from the Fort Worth Nature Center. So I don't have any problem calling this, a plain spotted skunk. Albeit if that would have been maybe there in the central portion of the state, I would probably reach out to a group of colleagues I have to get their opinion as well, to see what they thought. And then they're spotted skunks, and they're quick, and they move around a lot, and they sometimes don't give you the best images. So if I was in that St. Patrick portion of the state and I got this on my camera, I probably wouldn't be able to call this anything but a spotted skunk. Same with this one. Sometimes you get a little condensation on the lens, and you're in that standpoint, or you're in that position where if you don't know what the species is, you just can call it a spotted skunk. So be kind of moving on a little bit now to some of our research, our recent research. And to be fair, all those images you just looked at was from our research over the last few years, just kind of a slightly different topic. But in 2014 through 2017, we had a project called the conservation status of the plain spotted skunk in Texas. And there were 4 big tenets of the project. And the first was to go into the museums and go into the literature and find all the historical records that had ever been found in Texas, and take those and create what's called a species distribution model. And if you guys don't know what that is from the wording, it's just the heat maps that shows the distribution. And I've got one here in a couple slides, so I'll show it to you then. And then from that historical SDM, we would use those locations to go out into the field with traps and track plates and cameras and look for the skunks. And then we would take all that survey data from all those skunks we were supposed to find and create a current SDM, which would have been 2000 to, at the time, 2017. And then we were out there, and everyone we were catching, we were taking genetic samples. And that project, which was my partner on the project, Alex, she was looking at the genetic health of the species here in the state. So you might have picked up that our survey results were not the greatest. What we ended up having to do was go to this crowdsource method, this crowdsource techniques, where we were just querying whoever we could, whatever groups we could in the state of Texas, to try to find records of spotted skunks. And they could have been anything. We got some old and current trail camera images. We had an iNaturalist project we put up that's still going to this day. We were working with both citizen scientists as well as kind of the professionals within the state, the professional biologists. We ended up working with three master naturalist chapters. I think that was the Rolling Plains, the El Camino Real, and the Indian Hills chapters. And we had individuals within those groups out running camera trap surveys, either on public land or their own property. And this was just, it was really good, really, really good. What we found between the time frame of 2000 to 2018, we started with 10 records in that time frame in the museums, and getting out there and doing everything, we upped it to 110 records. And out of that, only 12 of those were individuals that we personally went out and got in the field as far as our surveys are concerned. And these crowdsourced methods are still going on. I just a couple of weeks ago, I got a camera trap image in from one of the master naturalists in Erath County. So just a little bit more about the history of that project. So the genetic analysis confirmed at the time, this was 2018 when this was published, but confirmed that the 3 subspecies of the eastern spotted skunk, which is the Plains, the Appalachian, and the Florida, were all designated subspecies. And at the time, we probably could have queried or made a suggestion to have the Plains subspecies elevated to species status. But the individuals that were working on the taxonomic revision for the whole genus were colleagues of ours, and we just said, all right, you guys do it, and didn't worry about that. We did find kind of both in the state and throughout the Plains region that there was a pretty substantial reduction in genetic diversity within the species. Not quite what you would consider endangered level, i.e. it's not like black-footed ferrets, but it was kind of similar to species that are right there on the cusp of threatened. I think one of the ones we used was maybe the San Joaquin kit fox, kind of had a similar reduction in genetic diversity. And as far as kind of the distribution, you could see there in the map, what we was finding as far as current distribution within the state of Texas. And we found 2 really, really good population centers. One of them was at Fort Hood, and then the second was on the Katy Prairie, which is just west of Houston, excuse me. And as far as, kind of the recent impacts and the future impacts into the species, we found, it's habitat loss and habitat alteration that's caused the issues. And then, you could see on the map there, you're looking at the I-45 corridor, and you're looking at Dallas and Austin, and there's nothing in Harris County anymore because there's no natural habitat in Harris County. So we found that, the urbanization was gonna hit them pretty hard. But then kind of strangely enough, oil and gas was one of those land use practices that didn't really seem, both historically and in the future, it didn't look like it was going to have a lot of impacts on the species distribution. So kind of just to update that map a little bit, and I've got all the ecoregions of Texas here on this map. And just at the county level, this is 2000 through 2021, and just showing all the counties within the state where we've got records of the spotted skunk. And I'll be honest, I've forgotten the name of the earlier speaker, but he was from Welder. And if you look down there in the bottom right, that's San Patricio County, and some colleagues down there surveying herps and small mammals actually got several plain spotted skunk detections last year. And we put that together into a little note, and we've got it submitted right now. So I just thought that was kind of interesting, the way things work. And I probably don't have to show you guys where you live, what your county is, but I've got it highlighted here. And you can really see that, we're talking about the cross timbers ecoregion there, and Coryell and Bell and Fort Hood. You've got a little bit of that type of habitat there in the northwest portion of the county. And then, we've got that stuff over there in the west on the balcones. And we know we know that there's spotted skunks over there, but right now it looks like they're probably western. Yep. So looking at this map, this is from a publication we've got coming out in the Texas Tech Museum Occasional Papers, and it just kind of updates the distribution of the five skunk species here in Texas. So what this map is it's the two spilagale, and in white it's the plains, in dark gray it is the western, and in light gray you see that area of Sympatry. And those counties there with the red dot in them, those are areas where historically the western species wasn't found, and it was only easterns. But within the last 5 years or 10 years, we found westerns over in those counties. So it certainly seems right now that the western species is moving east into areas that are probably being extirpated, or where the plain spotted skunk is extirpated in the state, and they're moving in and kind of taking over that niche. So kind of on to our current project, and this is the one I'm doing my PhD on. So we started in 2019, and what we wanted to do was survey and monitor a population. And really, I wanted to, put some collars, put some VHF and GPS collars on skunks and track them around and see what they were doing. Excuse me. So yeah, we designed this project really around my desire to put collars on these skunks. So that necessitated a little bit of live trapping and some camera trap surveys. We'll talk about that. So kind of initially we walked in and we said, we kind of got these project objectives, and we put that in the grant when we funded it. This is what we're going to do. And I'm not going to read all this, and I don't expect you guys to either, but COVID hit. There was stuff we couldn't do because of COVID. Mainly, one of the things I wanted to do with the camera traps was get out and use the two local master naturalist chapters there, and get out on some different properties than our big main sites. That didn't happen. And then kind of a good thing, we were really finding such great stuff at our primary site that we said, do we really want to, fracture our workload and go start on something new where we don't know what COVID's going to do to us? So we eventually kind of just made the decision to stick with what we were doing and really knock the project out the park. And then the last thing I'll mention is that when we started, we were just going to do spotted skunks. But there's a lot of striped skunks out there, and we had the opportunity to start working with them. So we actually, pretty much everything we did with spotted skunks, we were doing the exact same stuff with striped skunks, which is really neat to have that comparison between the two similar species right there at the same site. Speaking of which, excuse me, guys. Sorry about that. I just copied and pasted this slide, and I actually had some audio on there. So our study site was in Southeast Texas, just west of Houston. It was on the Katy Prairie, which is a coastal tallgrass prairie ecosystem. And we were working with the Katy Prairie Conservancy, and they've got around 23,000 acres, either under that they own and have conserved, or that they have conservation easements on. And this is, you could see in the map here, that's Warren Ranch, and that's 6,004 acres, and with KPC owning about or having about a 71% stake in the ranch, and the Warren family maintaining about a 29% stake. And there's multiple land use, so it is a working cattle ranch, but there is a lot of lands, and a lot of the management strategies are for the general conservation of the prairie and the habitat here. And then just a few of the other things, if you haven't never been there, I mean, there's actually working there's oil wells on the place, and there's actually a salt mine on the property. And then they have areas open to the public. And then, behind the gates, there's always a lot of birding going on, and they allow hunting during the season. So it's really was a very, very active place. And we're really happy with our results, because it kind of shows that, it doesn't have to be a pristine habitat to support these animals. You can work the land, and you can have all these different land uses and still have the species. And just kind of to show you some of the stuff that we're going to be talking about, these pictures are more of the McCartney Rose, which you can see in 1 and 3 and 2 there. And McCartney Rose is a non-native bramble that forms first these discrete clumps, as you see in number 1. And then eventually, as you see in number 2 there, they become kind of hedge forming or wall forming. And that's Matt. He was one of the master students on the project, and Matt's 6'2" or 6'3", something like that. And you can see that, the thick stuff there behind him is just as tall as he is. And spoiler alert, the skunks love that McCartney Rose. So that's where we were at most of the time when we were dealing with these little fellas. So overall, we were working from January 2019 through August 2021. We had 31 continuous months that we were on the ground. I was there every one of those months, and we always had at least one person there. But most times we had either another grad student or a technician, and then during the summers we would have maybe 4 or 5 people there doing all this work. But we ended up catching 50 total skunks, with 48 of those coming from Warren Ranch. We were able to get collars up on 46 of them. And as far as the striped skunks go, we worked up 59 because they were so abundant. If we didn't have time that day, we would just release a striped skunk and catch it the next day. And we put collars on about 60% of them, which was kind of this mix of VHF and GPS collars. And we ended up with about 62 seasons of spatial data from those guys. And then as far as the camera trap surveys, we were using beta cameras with our cameras, 2 of them 100 meters apart within the same pasture. We would run them for 21 days per season, all 4 seasons of the year. And at my 2 sites, I had 39 total camera stations. And defining a detection as a one plain spotted skunk for 24 hours at both cameras, we ended up with 240 detections during this time period at the 2 sites. And this is a very conservative estimate because I haven't gone back into the data. That's more of a field estimate. And what I mean by that is, looking at the images, if you have spotted skunk show up 3 times in one night on camera, we just counted that as one skunk, but you could look at it and see, oh, that one's got a collar. That's one skunk. That one doesn't have a collar. That's a second skunk. Or, oh, that's a male. That's a female. That's an adult. That's a young. So when we go back and actually really analyze these images, this number is going to climb by quite a bit. And then just to kind of show you guys, I guess, really the difficulty in surveying for these guys. And don't get me wrong, these are great numbers. I know the numbers of just about every survey that's happened here in the U.S. over the last 5 or 10 years, and this is about the second best, third best out of all of those. So these are great numbers, but we were only getting about 2.4 detections per 100 nights, and that ranged from about 0.82 detections during the summer, which is historically not the greatest time to survey for this species, up to about 3.4 during the winter. And that's what we saw both with our trapping work and our camera trap work, that about the 15th through the January through the 15th of February, you were getting them on camera a lot, you were catching them a lot. And what we think is happening is this is kind of the time period right before they entered into a breeding season. They breed a breeding condition, and they were getting some type of environmental cues to go out and really feed really heavily during this time period, because they would not be doing as much feeding during the breeding season. So kind of think that might have been why we see such increased detections during this time frame. But kind of looking at those 27 camera stations there on the ranch, on a given season, which, remember, that's 27 stations times 2 cameras each, only about 9 of those were going to have a skunk on camera. And overall, we ended up with about 71% of those cameras eventually hitting a spotted skunk. And I got to toot my horn a little bit as we're getting here to the end. So this is the first project to successfully use these GPS collars. We've caught and put collars on 50% more that's ever been reported. We've got over 100% more seasons that's ever been reported. And it's going to be the first one to report on spotted versus striped skunk ecology. So I had to do it for myself. Anyway, just to talk a little bit about one of our findings. So this is Cameron, and she was looking at denning ecology. And what we would do, we would catch them, we would put a collar on them. She would go out and track the skunk to a daytime resting place. And then within 15 days later, we'd come along and we'd do a veg survey within 10 meters of that site, where we were just taking everything, categorical data as far as what species were there and the height of the vegetation. And most of the time, what we were seeing was that the skunks were actually above ground, but I wanted to put this picture in here to give you an idea of what an entrance looks like when they were below ground. So just really small openings that they were making themselves. And well, sometimes we would find them, they had taken over like a pocket gopher mound, but we'd never found them in burrows the size of, say, an opossum or an armadillo size hole. And so over the time frame, we had 30 skunks that we monitored for this project, or for this portion of the project. And 75% of the time, they had rest sites in McCartney Rose, and 14% of the time, they were in Southern Dewberry. And kind of the analysis that we did is called discrete choice modeling. And one of the interesting things about that is it looks at not necessarily the 75 and the 14, but it looks at the 75 and the 14 in relationship to how much McCartney Rose and how much Dewberry was around those sites. And what we found was that both of those were really important to rest site selection, and that the Southern Dewberry was actually about 5 times more important than the McCartney Rose, because there was so much less of it out on the landscape than the McCartney Rose. And the cover was actually the most important thing. What we would find is they would be in these dense thickets, and then you get away from that kind of discrete bush, and the habitat wouldn't be quite so thick. And we're thinking that maybe The McCartney Rose is limiting the rest site selection at this location because it's kind of knocking down the southern dewberry. And we're getting here to the very last thing, and the analysis and writing is still ongoing for this one. But I just wanted to kind of show you these next couple of slides. For the plain spotted skunk, smaller animal, they've got a so I just had a question in the chat from Cindy, and the question was, when you put the collars, the radio collars on the skunks, do you have to sedate them? Yes, we do sedate them. Not all groups sedate the skunks. Some groups actually run the skunks into a cone, like a squirrel cone, and they're able to work them up that way. But we wanted to take a lot of morphometric data, and we wanted to take a lot of biological samples from each skunk. So if we were going to, take a fecal sample or an ear clip, we needed the animals to be sedated to do that. And what we do is we first give them an oral inhalant for about 2 minutes in like a Rubbermaid taupe while the animal is still in the trap. And that will momentarily anesthetize them. And then we give them an intramuscular injection of Tilazol. And that process will keep them down for about 16 to 22 minutes is kind of the range that it'll keep the skunks down. All right, so back to the spatial ecology. What we're seeing, different size home ranges, as would be expected because they have different body size. Excuse me. Most of the time, the plain spotted skunk was in an individual pasture. They liked it internally, and they liked heavy cover. While the striped skunks, they had these large home ranges. They were using multiple pastures, and they were out on the edges and in open pastures. And you'll see that that arrow there just to note this pond, and that's just to give you an idea between these two maps I'm going to show you where everything is. So this is SO6, spotted skunk from summer of 2019, and the red dots are where he was at during the day sleeping. The black dots were where we tracked him to during the day, and all the white dots are where he was out foraging at night. And what you can see is, either the roads or the mowed pastures or the road mowed trails in the central portion there is really avoiding that. That big open space there to the southeast, he was avoiding that and was really staying internally a lot. And then we look at M001 here, and it's kind of the opposite. He was all along the roads. He was not going in internally in the pastures. And you see that area down there in the southwest that kind of was a cattle feeding area. And he seemed to really like foraging in that area a lot. So I just wanted to show you guys that, especially when thinking about some of these upcoming camera trap surveys of, how you should set your traps, just to have an idea of, what the skunks are doing. And then the very last thing, I've got 2 slides here. Got colleagues that just finished up some research at Fort Hood, and they were looking at the efficacy of attractants. It's kind of vague what I'm going through because they are not published. But on that YouTube page that I've got the link for you guys, Alex actually gave a presentation, so you can go and watch her presentation and get a whole lot better idea of what they were doing. But she was using 3 types of attractants to bait her camera traps, and she was using sardines and fatty acid scent tabs, and then to a lesser degree wild boar carcasses that were euthanized up there on Fort Hood. And then there was a control with no baits. And what she found was she had about 89 detections over 10,000 trap nights from 2019 and 2020, and found that wild boar and sardines were much, 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 much better than the scent tabs and the control. And just down there at the bottom for the sardines, she was getting a detection about once every 100 nights, and with the control, it was about once, or it was about 44 for every 100 nights. So, and here's all the links, and there's our iNaturalist, and that's the Eastern Spotted Skunk Cooperative Study Group, and that's our YouTube, and then the comptroller there. We've got just a blurb about our stuff, and I think there's some previous presentations on there. In August, we had in the Southeastern Naturalist a special issue that was just on the Eastern Spotted Skunk. And you guys can follow that link. And if there's any of those publications you want to read, just shoot me an email and I'll get it to you if you can't find it on Google. And then the last one there at the bottom was just we had some colleagues come out at the end of last year and do a mammal watching trip and see their first spotted skunks, and just a nice little write-up. There we go. And then there's my contact information. And feel free, anything spotted skunk related. I'm always available. And then I'd like to thank all of our volunteers at Field Crew, Texas Comptroller. Well, sorry guys. Oh, there we go. So this is it for the first part of the presentation. So if there's any questions anybody has.
So Clint, there are some questions. If you want to leave your contact information up there while you answer them, that'd be great.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that previous slide. So Paige was wondering if these guys, are they as agile and stuff as say a squirrel would be? Since about squirrel size, do they climb or what?
Yes. So that's a great question. Yeah. So when you think about the other skunks, especially a striped skunk, they're big and lumbering and can't really get around very well. But spotted skunks are very fusiform. They're very weasel-like. So they are very, very agile. And I would suggest, getting on YouTube. I'm sure most of you have seen video of the handstand, but look at some of that. And then one of the really neat things is that we're beginning to understand that spotted skunks and gray foxes actually have this mutualistic behavior. And you can watch a gray fox and spotted skunks foraging together. And it's really neat when you're seeing that spotted skunk follow behind the gray fox. I mean, he's just bouncing with him just right there behind him. So very agile. They can climb as opposed to the other skunk species. A lot of that is to find kind of a rest place. But we do know that they will get up there and they will forage a little bit, kind of at the lower levels, on small mammals or birds and bird nests.
Nice. And so Brent was asking, is there a real dividing line between the east-west skunk, or do they cross over a bit, or is it a habitat thing, or?
They're thinking about it. I had originally thought that it was the kind of the Colorado River, and then now I'm thinking it's more of the edge of the Edwards Plateau. But what we see, with the kind of the western / desert is a lot of the places they've been worked on in Texas. They like really big, really mature mesquite, Wasatch, and they like the really big, dense prickly pear pastures or patches. And unfortunately, I have not worked on plain spotted skunks in Texas where there is that habitat type, and to my knowledge, nobody else has either. So it's not really known as far as that goes, what they would both be doing in a similar habitat here in Texas. But I can tell you that like Stuff, the mountain both further east in there in Arkansas and Missouri, and then you going out to Washington and Oregon. They like a little bit different stuff. So in some places, the easterns are liking those early successional forests, and then some places they're liking older forests that have a lot of downfalls and stuff. And that's what you start seeing again once you get out to Oregon and Washington. A lot of that down timber and stuff and those deadfalls is where you start finding a lot of the skunks.
Thanks, neat. And so I'm going to ask my questions. I noticed when you were doing the different pictures of collections, there was quite a variance in the spot pattern. And I was wondering, can you actually use the spot patterns to differentiate, the different animals?
Yes and no. So yes, there is. Obviously, I can do it with my eyes, and we as researchers can do it with our eyes. Just the spotting pattern. But right now, nobody's had either the gumption to do it with a museum specimen or museum collections, and nobody's really had a big enough camera trap collection to do it. I've currently got it, and I'm actually right now trying to hire an undergrad, and I want to have them come on and do that, as part of both going through and cataloging all of my 1 million plus images, and then as a reward, other than just pay, have them do an undergrad thesis that looks at that, and it'll be easy. The machine learning is very sensitive, and it's one of those things. If you can tell it with human eyes, the machine is not going to have any problem whatsoever.
Cool. Paige was wondering, did you guys use iNaturalist to help monitor this the species distribution?
Yeah. So we did. So I went to a working group meeting in that was February of 2016, and we were already doing a little bit of the crowdsourced stuff. And during that month, a colleague, I think he's like the state mammalogist of Alabama, and I both independently set up projects. And his was the eastern spotted skunk, and mine was the spotted skunks of Texas. And have been querying both what was out there, as well as every time I do one of these, I generally put the iNat link up, and I did on the other page. Let's see, I put it up for.
I posted that into chat for everybody. So
I put it up on the other one, but yeah, we were using iNat. But to be honest, most of the iNat stuff, the overwhelming majority, was people that we told to put it on there. They'd email us or whatever. So we did get a few. I'm not don't want to downplay that for certain. We did get a few from iNaturalist.
So we got a couple of questions from some folks. You answered part of it about them being sedated, but the other question seems to be, how do you touch the skunk without getting sprayed, or how often do you get sprayed? And if you get sprayed, what's the best way to get rid of that spray?
Yeah, for sure. So in the trap, if you take some precautions, you really don't get sprayed much at all. I mean, you might go months without getting sprayed. Obviously there's that variance, and you have individual animals, and the precautions sometimes don't matter. Maybe the skunk's just having one of those days. But kind of the precautions are, you put a cover on the trap before you set the trap, so that it's in this nice dark area, and you put it, even when you set it with the cover on top of it, you put it into thick, heavy habitat, and you point it away from the east, so that when the rising sun comes up in the morning, the sunlight's not coming right through the trap door, because that'll make them mad, and that'll make them agitated. And when they're agitated, they're much more likely to spray. But once you get there and you got the skunk in the trap and it's got a cover on it, you take an additional cover, which is kind of like an old blanket or something, and you put it over the trap. You pick the skunk up, and you just take the skunk in the trap and you put it into one of those tubs, which is just a Rubbermaid tote that's 18 inches by 12 inches, 14 inches wide. You put a lid on it and you give them an oral inhalant for a couple minutes to kind of anesthetize them. And that works really well for both species and really, really don't get sprayed much at all like that. It does happen. Like I said, there's the variants, but really the way we got sprayed the most was sometimes we would go out at night and spotlight for striped skunks, both ones that had a collar on and new ones. And a lot of that is because it's really hard to catch striped skunks during the summer. And then if you want to change their collar and you can't catch them, you gotta do something. So we'd go out and we'd just find the animal at night with a spotlight. And then we'd run after it with a big tub until we got close enough to put the tub on top of it. And they didn't like that much. So we did get sprayed a little bit more doing that than you would than doing the trapping. But honestly, still doing that, it wasn't 100% of the time that we got sprayed, more like 50% or so.
And then your favorite way to get that smell off, what you did get it on?
Yeah. So, well, kind of the thing is it's the recipe with what is it? Hydrogen peroxide and Dawn and baking soda that neutralizes and gets the smell off.
Great. And then Jim was wondering, do you guys know what the main predators of the spotted skunks out at the Warren Ranch are?
Oh, we do. We actually know what the main predators pretty much everywhere are for all skunks, and that's the great horned owl. Really, really hard on skunks because if you think about it, owls have this very rudimentary sense of smell, so they really don't care, if they get sprayed. And kind of you think about skunks, the black and white, the warning color, the spray. They've evolved that for kind of mammalian predators. So if they're just out and about foraging, they're not really trying to hide that much from an owl. And an owl doesn't care if it gets sprayed. So yeah, that's what happens. We had 12 natural mortalities on the ranch while we was there, monitoring this population. And one of the really good things was that none of them were anthropogenic in nature. There was no hunting mortalities. There was no road kills. There was no dogs or anything like that getting a hold to the skunks. So that was really, really good. And then I think we had something like 4 or 5 were avian predation, and 2 of them were mammalian predation. And then we actually had, I think, 4 or 5 of them that just curled up and died, literally curled up and died. And one of them we got to so quickly, we got a professional necropsy done on it. And I don't remember exactly. I remember it had myocarditis, but I don't think that was the primary. I think it had some type, and it had pneumonia. But I think the primary cause was some type of renal failure.
Right. And on a related note, April's asking, would you guys inspect like the great horned owl pellets and nests and stuff for spotted skunk remains?
Well, so as a mammologist, I'm looking at in pellets for just about anything. I really like to find shrews in those pellets, because shrews are much harder to capture. As a human, they're a whole lot harder to capture than say a small mammal. But the owls catch them very easily. But yes, looking through any pellets I can find. In any location I can find, I'm gonna look through them, and I've found some really cool stuff throughout the years in pellets, and not just great horned owls. Looking at barred owls and barn owls and any of the large owls to see if there's anything of interest.
Cool. And then I think I've had just about every one of our nature tracker guys asking me, how often are you swapping out the bait in the sardine cans?
Great question. So I and that's before I answer this, I'll just go ahead and pose the question. So I did put together like another 10 minutes on kind of the kind of some best practices for the trail camera stuff, and that stuff's in there. If you guys want me to do it, I'll be happy to do it. If y'all want to go ahead and go, that's fine with me too. So kind of while I'm answering this, y'all can kind of figure out what y'all want to do. But yeah, so the sardine cans are about once a week, and that was more of just to standardize it. But during the summertime, what you see during that 1 week time period is that when you get to the sardine, there's nothing left there. The flies and the decomposers have got in through the holes in the can, and they've gotten everything. And conversely, during the winter time when it's cooler, you get there and it's been a week, and the sardines are just as potent and just as efficient as they were the day you put them out. And was there a second part to that question besides just sardines?
No, but we've got many yeses on continuing with the other 10 minutes. But let's go ahead and answer a couple more questions, and then we'll go on. Kathy was wanting to know, what is the spray potency on the spotted skunk, say, like versus the striped skunk? Is it pretty similar? Or?
So kind of the spray once it comes out. So for kind of all the species, when it comes out, it does have a little bit of sweetness that you could smell to it. But once it comes out and it gets mixed with the oxygen, it really turns into that rank skunk smell that you know so well. And if you get it on you, this is one of those things that you probably would not know unless you've been sprayed multiple times. But when you get sprayed, you get on it, almost immediately you go nose blind, and you can't smell it. It's you might smell it the next day when you wake up, or you might smell it a couple days later, because you got some on your boots or your belt or something like that. But when you're there working and you look down and you can kind of see it on you, you don't really smell it. And as far as if you get it in your eyes, if you've got water right there handy, it's really no more worse than just kind of getting soap in your eyes while you're in the shower. It's really, really similar to that.
So I take it, even though you're nose blind, probably the folks around you, they can smell it, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
So Elaine was wondering, do you guys know what the gestation period of these guys are, and what time of year do they have their young?
So that's a great question. So one of the real interesting things about skunks and spotted owl in particular is that many of them have what's called delayed implantation, which means that the females will actually ovulate in kind of the late summer and fall, and that's when copulation and breeding occurs. And then the egg gets fertilized, but kind of stays in a stasis form until the spring. And that's what we see in the western spotted skunks. In the eastern spotted skunks, if they have delayed plantation, it's only like 5 days, 7 days. So what we see, what we know, and this was from some really big captive population studies back in the 70s or 60s in Kansas, is that they're entering into that breeding season about the beginning of February. And by kind of early June, mid-June, they're just about done. But I will tell you that this year, I caught a male in August that was he was still in breeding condition. And most of the females are going to get bred right away, February, early March. And then it takes 60 days of gestation, and then we start seeing the litters being born, late May, early June, and then you kind of see some more late July, early August. And what we think those are, it's not that they're having 2 litters per year. We think that that's either females that lost their litter, have been rebred, or the young of the year females from the year before. It takes them a little bit longer than the adult females to come into breeding condition, and they're getting bred. Those are the ones that are kind of getting bred in late April and May and early June.
All right, well, that's all the questions we have right now. But everyone does seem to think this is the cutest skunk that they've ever seen. And we've got lots of folks that would be interested to hear the other 10, 15 minutes you have on the trapping, camera trap.
Great. Well, I am happy to do it. I'm glad everybody, or at least some of the folks are interested. I'd like to thank all of our, let me go to the next one. All right. So this is a whole lot less formal. Not that the previous portion of the presentation was formal, but this is a whole lot less formal than that. And it's really some best practices, and some of it's from my own personal experiences. Some of it's actually out there in the literature and whatnot. And I know that you guys are looking to put together a nature tracker project. So I will say that I did go on to iNaturalist, and some of you guys probably know that I'm pretty active on there, out identifying the mammals of Texas and the U.S. and the world. So I found some of the chapters, individuals, and some of their cameras. And I pulled a couple of those pictures for this portion of the presentation. And it wasn't to pick on anybody or anything like that, just to kind of have an example. And, going forward, I don't really know what the purpose of those surveys and those images were. So, I mean, take it with a grain of salt. I don't know what she was doing. Just kind of show you how it compares to a spotted skunk camera trap survey. So now that I've got the disclaimer out the way, really to be able to capture the spotted skunks on survey, you're going to have to go out and set your surveys up for spotted skunks, and not for deer, or not for mesocarnivores, or not just kind of general surveys. Because if you don't, it's going to be a whole lot less rare than 1 per 100 or 0.44 detections per 100. It's going to be 1 per 1,000, 1 per 10,000, something like that. So with that in mind, I've got these 4 kind of topics here, and kind of the first is location, and maybe I didn't say this during the first part of the presentation, but kind of those topics that we went over, a lot of it was to kind of put a little kernel in your minds when you're thinking about these camera trap surveys on what the skunks are doing and how you should be designing your surveys to get out there and find them. And then, we talked about the bait, and then here in a minute, we're going to talk about some camera settings, and then, set them low to the ground, and let them go for at least a month. So working through these, the location, it's really important to keep this in mind, that everything that we're going to be talking about here is from a spotted skunk's perspective. And when I say, internal habitat or heavy cover, I don't really mean what you would consider that, or what a raccoon would consider, or a white-tailed deer. I mean a spotted skunk. So, I showed you the map of the GPS data points from SO6. So I think you get an idea there what I mean by the internal habitat. So, get out, get away from the roads, get away from the openings. And that heavy cover, I know a lot of you are not going to be able to get into some of that, or you're not going to want to get into that, but it's going to be, if you want to find them, you got to find your tolerance level and get right up there to it as much as you can tolerate. And then try to avoid kind of the actual riparian of the riparian areas, these waterways and stuff. The skunks, the spotted skunks, they're really not utilizing that. Moreover, it kind of looks like they're actually avoiding these type of areas. And I don't know if they're avoiding them because they don't really need to have an uptake of physical water on the landscape, or if it's because other mesocarnivores are there hunting and foraging and they're trying to avoid them, but they really are avoiding these areas. And I can't see everything in this image here, but one of the places that, and I'll talk a little bit about this some more in a minute, but upslope from that, if we would to kind of see a spotted skunk using this area, I bet it would be upslope from this rather than here in the actual bottom. And then kind of the next thing is, avoid large trails. If it's a hiking trail, or if it's maybe a cattle trail or a deer trail or something like that, unless you got a lot of spotted skunks, they're probably not going to be using those. If you're putting on a trail, it needs to be something rabbit sized, or even if you use these larger trails, you probably should be looking for really thick areas and pinch points and stuff like that, where there is that overhead cover from the skunk. And then, if you're surveying burrows, I showed you the size of that burrow opening for a spotted skunk earlier, and I mean that thing was really really small. It was at a 10-centimeter opening. So if you're looking at these areas that are, like I said, armadillo size and raccoon size and stuff like that, you're probably going to have not as much success. And then also, if you're looking for those areas, maybe try to stay away from the ones that are not that open. Maybe you have to look at a large burrow or a large opening or something like that. Well, maybe pick the one that's in a little bit more cover than the one that's out in the opening. Then this picture here in the bottom, this is actually the one I got from Erath County just a few weeks ago. And that's one of the things, you're going to see some pictures in here of the next few slides that are not mine. And because it's kind of associated with public lands, can't really tell you whose picture it is or where it came from other than at the county level. So you might recognize, oh, that's Frank's picture or Joe's picture or something like that. And if you do, that's fine, but I can't tell you whose picture it is. Yeah, but you can see kind of there that rock wall, that rock ledge. I really like the way the camera is positioned there. You can kind of see that little opening, but then you can also see all the way along that rock ledge. And he's got the skunk right there. It's framed up real good. There's absolutely no doubt that that's a plain spotted skunk. So that's just a really really good really good picture and really good bit of survey there. And this is a master naturalist, and I actually don't know what he was surveying for or what the project was. But then also kind of look for some funnels or some pinch points and stuff. If you're going to be out there sitting on location and not using bait, try to find like really thick habitat. And if there's kind of this natural travel way between that thick habitat, and you can't get into that thick habitat, set on that funnel or set on that pinch point and see if you can catch them there. And then, as I was saying earlier, if you've kind of got some drainages, maybe not at the very bottom is where you want to go. Maybe you want to be upslope from that just a little bit more, where you start seeing a little bit thicker habitat, and the skunks would be kind of using that area as a travel corridor. And then if you're getting a lot of mesocarnivores, especially raccoons, on your cameras, you're in the wrong spot for spotted skunks. In general, you can get all of them and still get spotted skunks, but if you're getting a lot, and if you're getting every species and a lot of them, you're in the wrong spot. But then, kind of remember, there is a little bit of mutualism there between the gray fox and the spotted skunk. So, maybe if you're getting a lot of gray foxes, that might be an all right spot. Or if it's only gray fox, might be an all right spot. There was not gray fox at the Katy Prairie, so we didn't get to test that. And then all the other places we went to throughout the years, we were only there for 10 days. So, you might have 3 or 4 or 5 spotted skunk pictures or captures or whatever per location, but just not enough to see that correlation between gray fox and spotted skunk. So I actually don't know that much about this, except for what I'm seeing on the internet and some publications that are coming out. And then, so these are some more crowdsourced. And then I hope you guys can look at the left one there and see that's a Western, and that the one here on the right is a plain or an Eastern. So is this, location or bait? The one on the left is these are both wildlife fevers. The one on the left is I guess deer, ungulate, excuse me. While the one on the right is a quail feeder. And the skunks are there, and they're interacting with it for sure, even though these devices were not put out for them. So just an idea, maybe if you have some of these on your property or some of the properties that you're surveying, it might be good to get a camera up on them. And then as far as the bait itself goes, it's much more efficient at bringing the skunks to the station, and it's more efficient at keeping the skunks at the station. And we'll go through some more pictures here in a minute to kind of really foment the idea that these guys are zipping around and at the site, and they're hard to get a good picture on. But one of the things I noticed was that about 30% of my pictures were skunks that came to the site and either didn't investigate the bait, or they investigated the bait and I didn't get a picture of them doing it. So that really tells me, I could either be, by not having the bait out there, not getting a lot of these images, excuse me, or that I'm having some issues with the cameras. And while bait types kind of do vary, sardines are really the current go-to right now with this species. They're easy to do, they're easy to handle, they're relatively cheap, and they respond really well to them. Honestly, there's probably some type of better bait out there, but it's one of those things. Science moves incrementally, and it moves slowly. And then, like I was saying earlier, the cooler months, you can leave the sardines out for more than a week, but during the summer, you really need to be replacing the bait kind of quickly. And then, so this is talking about the camera settings that you have, and trying to maximize those and everything. And I just want to impress that you really, whatever camera you're using, to really look into and understand the settings on the camera, where the detection bands are, what it means for trigger sensitivity between ultra and high and low and normal and all that. And this is a really good example of that. So we've got this publication here, Urbanek in 2019, which are some colleagues in North Carolina that were doing a spotted skunk survey, and noticed that their Reconyx cameras were not performing as well as some of their other ones. So they kind of went through and put together this paper to show that. And I did the same thing with my 2019 data set, showing that these Reconyx Hyperfire ones, either 800 or 900, are not that efficient at detecting spotted skunks. But kind of taking these two images here side by side in juxtaposition with the same camera type, looking at those bands there, if you just move them kind of mentally from right to left, you could see that that bottom band, if that skunk just ran in front of the bait and didn't go investigate it, I'd have an image of it there. And then that top band, if he goes up there and he investigates the bait, I'm gonna get him there too. And it's kind of important, when you're talking about that focal area and how you're focusing those cameras. They really, really need to be low. My cameras, I like the quote unquote top of the camera to be at about 33 centimeters above the ground, which puts my shooting surface there below 30 centimeters above the ground. And then, like I said, understand that some of these camera types are going to be inefficient, or some of them are going to be better than others. But you can work within the settings to kind of increase the efficiency, especially if you understand the bands and you understand that the cameras need to be low. So there is a spotted skunk in this image here, and I went ahead and put a circle on it because I'm not sure anybody would have been able to pick it out there if I didn't have. And to be fair, this camera was taking three images per trigger, so I looked at it, there at the bait for the preceding two images and knew what it was. But one of the things you got to have, because these guys are so quick and they're darting about, you got to have something with just a very quick trigger speed. And I'm gonna be honest, I don't know all the terminology for cameras, even though I use them. So I'm sure that there's some really good photographers that are listening to me right now. So I don't want to get out there and step on any toes, because I don't know that much about it. I just kind of know a little bit about the trail cameras and whatnot. But that's one of the things, is having the quick trigger feed, or the quick trigger speed, and having the refraction time be really quick between the trigger events. You look at some of them and it takes 20 seconds for the camera to recharge between trigger events. And then you look at some of them and it takes, just a couple seconds. And that's kind of what you want, because especially if you're not using bait, that skunk might be in front of that camera for only just a couple seconds. And you gotta really, really, really have a camera that's going to pick them up there. And then this is a good one. We were kind of talking about the focal area, and I showed you the bands. And this is the same station, albeit one of them is in summer and one of them is in spring. So one of them's in fall. So you can kind of see here that focal area, and you can see the daytime, and you could tell I had to go in there with a weed eater and cut all this grass down, and I had to do it, once every 10 days or so to keep this area from growing up and having grass get in front of the camera. But outside of that grass, that camera is not going to pick that skunk up. And that's really important when you're thinking about those bands and that focal area. If you're putting one of those bands up there in that grass right there where the bait is or whatnot, you have to understand that you're not going to pick up a skunk in that. So really, it's kind of moot. It's kind of a disadvantageous to actually have the band up there. And that's why, one of the reasons why I like the one really low between the bait and the camera, and then the other one right on that bait. And then you can see it over there in the image to the right, and that is a spotted skunk. And he's, those bait cans are 3 meters away, and he's less than a foot behind the bait, and you can barely see him there. And then, kind of the set them low and let them go. I think I've shown you guys, why kind of that's needed. But one of the things, if you're putting these guys on trees, once you get down there to the base of the tree, you're going to have trouble with kind of the root bulbous and stuff. And one of the things you can do is you can use shims. And what I mean by that is, if you're going out there to set a camera, you're probably going to have maybe a set of hand pruners, hand shears, or a machete or something, and you're going to cut a few limbs and stuff out the way. And just take those little limbs or whatnot that are the size of your pinky or your thumb or whatever, and kind of use them to help shim that camera on the tree and get it level and get it low. And then also, if you're going just for spotted skunks, maybe consider turning your cameras off during the day, because the 7 years I've been doing this, I've gotten one during the day, and it was 30 minutes after daylight, and it was a female that was out foraging because she had some young ones in the nest, and she was having to forage a little bit during the daylight. So it just really doesn't happen that they're out during the day foraging. And then kind of leave them in a single location as long as possible. Looking at kind of the everything, the group as a whole, looking at kind of new locations where you don't know if there's spotted skunks, trying to figure out if they're there. The latency to detection, the average time on a lot of those projects, runs into the 20 or 30 days, and it's not uncommon to see some of them. The first time they detect a skunk be 2 months after they put the camera out. So if you can, obviously with a little bit of station maintenance every once in a while, leave them there at that location, as long as possible. And then kind of my final thoughts here is, I don't know everything. I honestly, I don't even try to pretend to. There's still a lot of stuff out there that we don't know about this species. So really get the cameras out there and find some skunks, and, let them tell you where to set. And, if there's anybody that has any questions on this, I'll be happy to answer some more.
So Miriam, I'm wondering, her camera stand is not that low and stuff, but she can't adjust the angle on it. Does it, help to shoot down on them, or do you? Really
so I'm gonna go back to kind of the bands. So you see, if you're, and this one's not very low, but if you think of those bands, so that's actually a laser that's shooting out there, right? And if something passes through that laser, it's going to trigger the camera. So now if you pick it up and you increase the level that the camera's at and that angle, you're not getting that straight laser going out across the ground like that. So you're really, really decreasing your area that you can detect a skunk in.
Great.
Does that make sense?
Yep, certainly does. So get them low. And April's wondering, have you ever managed to catch a skunk mating or nesting?
Well, ask her what she means by nesting. But so our colleagues at Fort Hood, just 19 or 20, I don't remember which one, they actually got about 5 minutes worth of copulation on camera up there. And it was the first time that's ever been captured on camera. And it was kind of a little bit of a rough, traumatic event for the female. But it does happen like that. It's a lot of scruffing and grasping of the neck with the mouth of the male. But I know that's the first time on camera, and really, I don't think I've ever even heard of anybody, seeing copulation before.
Well, great. I think that's all the questions. Everybody's been very thankful, and we're so happy that you've given us this 10 or 15 minutes extra here. We do have some guys, and we've got some areas where we're going to be looking for spotted skunks. And I think a lot of this information is going to be very helpful for, how we go set up to do that. So thanks again for your presentation tonight. And thank everybody for joining us. And hopefully there's no meeting next month, but hopefully we'll all be getting together actually in person this time in December, and it'd be great for everybody to see everybody again. So thanks again, Clint, and I hope everybody has a great evening.
Thank you, everyone. Talk to you later.
All right. Good night.